My name is Caroline Mitchell, and I'm 34 years old. I grew up in a small town in Ohio called Millerville, population 8,000, where my dad worked at the local factory and my mom ran the church fundraisers. We didn't have much money, but we had something that apparently can't be bought: integrity. My parents taught me that your word is your bond, that you work hard for what you get, and that you stand by the people you love, no matter what. I carried those values with me when I moved to Chicago after college and worked my way up to senior marketing executive at a tech startup. I was good at my job because I believed in being genuine, in building real relationships, in doing right by people. I thought everyone operated that way. Then I met Dominic. Dominic Alexander Whitmore III. Yes, he actually went by the full name, was everything I wasn't. 38 years old, Harvard Law graduate, partner at one of Boston's most prestigious corporate law firms. His family had old money, the kind that came with trust funds and country club memberships, and connections that opened doors before you even knocked. Where I was direct and honest, Dominic was smooth and calculated. Where I earned my success through hard work, his was handed to him on a silver platter that had been in his family for generations. But here's what I didn't understand at the time. Charm and authenticity can look identical from the outside, especially when someone has spent their entire life perfecting the performance. I should have seen the red flags from day one. The pregnancy scare happened in our first year of marriage. I was 2 weeks late, and when I took the test, it was positive. I was terrified, but also secretly excited. When I told Dominic, his reaction was immediate and cold. "We need to handle this," he said, not, "We're having a baby," or "How do you feel?" Just, "We need to handle this." The test turned out to be a false positive, but his reaction told me everything I needed to know about what he thought of me, of us, of any future we might have together. Then came the moment that changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning in March, and I was getting ready for work when Dominic cornered me in our kitchen. He was holding a cup of coffee, perfectly calm, like he was about to discuss the weather. "Caroline, I want a divorce." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What? You heard me. This isn't working. We both know it." "Dominic, what are you talking about? We can work through." "There's nothing to work through," he interrupted, his voice cold and clinical. "I've already spoken to my attorney. The papers will be filed this week." I felt the world tilting beneath my feet. Why? What did I do? He actually smiled then, that cruel, condescending smile I'd learned to hate. "It's not what you did, Caroline, it's what you are. You're not enough, you never were. I don't understand. The prenup is very clear about what happens in case of divorce. You'll get a small settlement, enough to rent a modest apartment somewhere, maybe go back to school and learn a useful skill. I'm being generous, considering." "Generous? Caroline, let's be realistic. You brought nothing to this marriage. No money, no connections, no real career prospects. I gave you a lifestyle you could never have achieved on your own. The prenup protects my family's assets, as it should." I was crying now, but he continued with the detached professionalism of a lawyer explaining a contract to a client. "You have 30 days to vacate the house. I'll have my assistant help you find something suitable in your price range. And Caroline?" He paused at the kitchen door. "Don't even think about fighting this. The prenup is ironclad. You'll get exactly what you deserve. Nothing." That night, after he'd left for what he claimed was a business dinner, but I knew it was another evening with Jennifer, I sat in our empty house and made a decision. I wasn't going to be his victim anymore. If you want to know how I took down my husband and gave him a shocker of his life, click on the subscribe button and let me know in the comments what country you're watching from. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent 3 hours researching divorce attorneys in Chicago. I needed someone who specialized in high-asset divorces, someone who wouldn't be intimidated by the Whitmore name, someone who had a reputation for fighting dirty when necessary. I found Lisa Chen. Lisa Chen was a 42-year-old powerhouse in a designer suit who had built her career destroying men like Dominic. She was a Harvard Law graduate herself, which meant she spoke Dominic's language, but she'd spent the last 15 years representing wives in high-profile divorces. Her office walls were covered with newspaper clippings about cases she'd won, settlements she'd secured, and powerful men she'd brought to their knees. "Mrs. Whitmore," Lisa said during our first consultation, reviewing the prenup I'd brought with me, "I'll be honest with you. On the surface, this looks airtight. But I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've learned that when something looks too good to be true, it usually is." "What do you mean?" "I mean that prenups this comprehensive, this heavily weighted in one party's favor, often have flaws, technical flaws that make them unenforceable. Let me have my team examine this more closely." Lisa had the sharp intelligence of someone who'd clawed her way to the top of a male-dominated field, and the quiet fury of someone who'd seen too many women destroyed by men who thought they were untouchable. "Caroline, can I ask you something personal? Did your husband pressure you to sign this prenup?" "He said it was just a formality. That his family required it." "And did you have your own attorney review it before you signed?" "He said that would be insulting to his family, that it would suggest I didn't trust him." Lisa's expression darkened. "Classic manipulation tactic. Let me guess, he also told you that any woman who truly loved him would sign without question?" I nodded, feeling foolish. "Caroline, you're not the first intelligent woman to fall for this. Men like your husband are experts at manipulation. But here's what he doesn't know. I'm an expert at destroying men like him." 3 days later, Lisa called me with news that would change everything. "Caroline, I need you to sit down. We found something." "What kind of something?" "Your prenup was never properly notarized. The notary seal is irregular, the signature doesn't match the notary's registered signature on file, and the date of notarization doesn't align with when the document was supposedly signed." My heart started pounding. "What does that mean?" "It means your prenup isn't legally binding, it's worthless." But here's the interesting part. This wasn't an accident. Someone deliberately filed a defective document. While Lisa was building the legal case, she connected me with Robert Hayes, a forensic accountant who specialized in uncovering hidden assets in high-net-worth divorce cases. Robert was everything you'd expect from someone who spent his days following money trails: methodical, precise, and absolutely relentless when he caught the scent of financial fraud. "Mrs. Mitchell," Robert explained during our first meeting, "your husband has been very careful about keeping his financial affairs separate from you. But careful doesn't mean invisible. There are always traces, and I'm very good at finding them." Robert had sandy brown hair, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and the quiet confidence of someone who'd spent 20 years dismantling financial lies. He'd started his career with the FBI's white-collar crime unit before going private, and he had a reputation for finding money that other people thought was impossible to trace. "The first thing we need to understand," Robert continued, "is that men like your husband don't just hide assets from their wives. They hide them from everyone. The IRS, business partners, even their own families. Once we start pulling threads, we usually find that the financial deception goes much deeper than just a divorce." What Robert found over the next 6 weeks was staggering. Dominic had been systematically hiding assets for years. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, investment properties held in shell companies, a complex web of trusts and LLCs designed to make his wealth invisible to anyone who might come looking for it. But the most shocking discovery was the tax evasion. "Caroline, your husband has been under-reporting his income to the IRS for at least 5 years, Robert explained, showing me spreadsheets that made my head spin. "We're talking about millions of dollars in unpaid taxes." "How did he get away with it?" "His law firm has been helping him. They've been classifying personal expenses as business expenses, hiding income through fake consulting fees, creating phantom employees. It's sophisticated, but it's also completely illegal." The three of us, Lisa, Robert, and I, became an unlikely team, united by a single goal: bringing down Dominic Whitmore and his criminal empire. Lisa provided the legal strategy, Robert provided the financial investigation, and I provided the inside knowledge of how Dominic operated. "We're not just going to win this divorce," Lisa told me during one of our strategy sessions. "We're going to destroy him. When we present this evidence to the court, your husband won't just lose his assets, he'll lose his freedom." But building a case against someone like Dominic required evidence that went beyond financial records. We needed to prove a pattern of manipulation, control, and abuse that demonstrated his character and his methods. Lisa had me start documenting everything. Every conversation, every threat, every attempt at intimidation. I kept a detailed journal of his behavior, saved screenshots of his text messages, and recorded phone calls where he made threats about what would happen if I didn't drop the divorce. "You're making a mistake, Caroline," he said during one particularly hostile phone call. "I'm trying to be generous here, but if you keep pushing this, I'll make sure you lose everything: your job, your reputation, your future. I have connections you can't even imagine." What he didn't know was that I was recording every word. The breakthrough came when Robert discovered that Dominic's law firm had been using their client trust account, money that legally belonged to their clients, to fund their money laundering operation. This wasn't just tax evasion anymore. This was theft. "Caroline, sit down," Robert said when he called me with the news. "We found something that changes everything." "What kind of something?" "Your husband's firm has been stealing from their clients. They've been using client funds to purchase properties, make investments, and fund their personal expenses. We're talking about millions of dollars in misappropriated client money." The implications were staggering. Not only was Dominic going to face criminal charges, but his entire law firm was about to be investigated by the FBI for federal crimes. "How did they think they could get away with this?" I asked. "Arrogance. They thought they were too smart, too connected, too protected to ever get caught. But they made one crucial mistake. They underestimated you." Lisa was practically vibrating with excitement when she called me after Robert shared his findings. "Caroline, we're not just going to win this divorce. We're going to destroy him. When we present this evidence to the court, your husband won't just lose his assets, he'll lose his freedom. And his law firm? They're going to be shut down and criminally prosecuted." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. We would present our evidence to the divorce court, but we would also be turning everything over to the FBI, the IRS, and the State Bar Association. Dominic would face criminal charges, professional sanctions, and civil liability that would bankrupt him even if he avoided prison. "But Caroline," Lisa warned, "when someone like your husband realizes they're cornered, they become extremely dangerous. He's going to escalate his behavior. We need to be prepared for that." She was right. As our court date approached, Dominic's psychological warfare became more intense and more personal. He started spreading rumors about me at work, calling my colleagues and clients to express concerns about my mental health and professional competence. "I'm worried about Caroline," he'd tell people. "She's been under a lot of stress lately. Making accusations, acting paranoid. I think she might be having some kind of breakdown." My boss called me into his office after receiving 3 separate calls from Dominic expressing concern about my unstable behavior. "Caroline, I don't know what's going on in your personal life, but it's starting to affect your professional reputation. Maybe you should consider taking some time off." This was exactly what Dominic wanted. To isolate me, discredit me, and make me financially vulnerable before the divorce proceedings began. But I wasn't the same naive woman who'd married him. I was someone who'd been through hell and learned to fight back. "I'm not taking time off," I told my boss. "But I am going to give you some information that might help you understand what's really happening." I showed him the recordings of Dominic's phone calls, the evidence of his attempts to sabotage my career, and the documentation of his systematic harassment. My boss's expression changed from concern to anger. "Caroline, this is harassment. Have you considered getting a restraining order?" "It's in progress," I lied. But after that conversation, I realized it shouldn't be a lie. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks before our divorce trial. Dominic's attorney argued that I was being vindictive, and that my husband's concerns about my mental health were legitimate, and came from a place of love. The judge listened to the recordings of Dominic's threats, reviewed the evidence of his surveillance and harassment, and granted the restraining order immediately. "Mr. Whitmore," Judge Martinez said, "you are to have no contact with your wife outside of court-supervised proceedings. Any violation of this order will result in immediate arrest." If you're enjoying this story and want to see how Dominic's world completely crumbles in that courtroom, make sure you hit that subscribe button because what happened next was more satisfying than any movie ending you've ever seen. Dominic's face when he realized that his perfect plan had backfired was something I'll never forget. But his reaction to the restraining order was nothing compared to what happened when he found out about the FBI investigation. 2 days after the restraining order was granted, federal agents raided his law firm. They seized computers, files, financial records, and arrested 3 partners on charges of money laundering and fraud. The local news covered it as the biggest white-collar crime bust in the city's history. Dominic called me that night, violating the restraining order, his voice shaking with rage. "You destroyed my life," he said. "Do you understand what you've done?" "I understand perfectly," I replied. "I've made sure you'll never be able to do to another woman what you did to me." "This isn't over, Caroline. I'll appeal everything. I'll fight this until my last breath." "No, Dominic, this is over. You just don't know it yet." The next morning, I called the police to report the violation of the restraining order. Dominic was arrested at his office in front of his remaining colleagues and spent the night in jail. Let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone's entire world collapse because they thought they were untouchable? Because that's exactly what happened to Dominic, and the best part was that he had orchestrated his own destruction by underestimating the woman he'd tried to break. The morning of our divorce hearing, I woke up with a strange sense of calm. After months of preparation, documentation, and sleepless nights, the day had finally arrived. I put on my best navy suit, not because I was trying to impress anyone, but because I wanted to feel strong, professional, unbreakable. Dominic arrived at the courthouse like he was attending a board meeting where he already knew the outcome. Expensive suit, confident stride, that same smug expression he'd worn when he told me I'd get nothing. He nodded at his attorney, Bradley Morrison, like they were about to execute a flawless game plan. "Your Honor," Bradley began, addressing Judge Wilson with the kind of practiced confidence that comes from decades of winning cases. "This is a straightforward dissolution of marriage. My client and Mrs. Whitmore have a comprehensive prenuptial agreement that clearly delineates the division of assets." Judge Wilson, a stern woman in her early 60s, with silver hair and sharp eyes, accepted the prenup documents and began reviewing them while Bradley continued his opening statement. "As you can see, Your Honor, the prenuptial agreement is ironclad. It was prepared by one of Boston's most prestigious law firms and properly executed according to Massachusetts law. Mrs. Whitmore waives all claims to marital assets, spousal support, and any portion of my client's family inheritance." Dominic was practically glowing with satisfaction. He glanced at me with that same condescending look he'd given me 100 times before. The look that said, "I told you so," before the words even came out of his mouth. That's when Judge Wilson looked up from the documents, her expression troubled. "Mr. Morrison, I'm examining this prenuptial agreement, and I have some concerns about the notarization." The first crack in Bradley's confidence appeared. "Concerns, Your Honor?" "The notary seal appears to be irregular. The signature doesn't match the registered signature for this notary on file with the state, and the date of notarization doesn't align with when the document was supposedly signed." I watched Dominic's face change in real time. The confident smile faltered. His eyes darted from the judge to his attorney, then back to the judge. "Your Honor," Bradley said, his voice slightly strained, "I can assure you that all proper procedures were followed. This document was prepared by my firm's most experienced attorneys." "Mr. Morrison, can you verify when and where this document was properly notarized? Because according to my records, the notary listed on this document was not licensed to practice in Massachusetts on the date shown." The silence in that courtroom was deafening. I could hear Dominic's breathing from across the room, could see the exact moment he realized his perfect plan was falling apart. "Your Honor," Lisa Chen stood up, her voice clear and confident, "my client would like to challenge the validity of this prenuptial agreement on the grounds that it was never properly executed." "On what grounds, Miss Chen?" "On the grounds that the notarization is fraudulent. The document was signed under duress, and the defendant deliberately filed defective paperwork to mislead my client into believing she had no legal rights. Dominic's attorney was frantically shuffling through papers, looking for some way to salvage the situation. Your Honor, even if there are technical irregularities with the notarization, the intent of the parties was clear. Mrs. Whitmore knew she was signing a prenuptial agreement. Mr. Morrison, Judge Wilson's voice was sharp, there are no technical irregularities when it comes to legal documents. Either this prenup is valid or it isn't, and based on my preliminary review, it appears that it isn't. That's when I watched Dominic's world begin to crumble. The color drained from his face. His hand started shaking. For the first time in our entire relationship, he looked genuinely afraid. Your Honor, Lisa continued, we'd like to present evidence that this invalid prenup was part of a systematic pattern of financial abuse and fraud perpetrated by Mr. Whitmore against my client. Proceed, Miss Chen. What happened next was like watching a master prosecutor dismantle a criminal case piece by piece. Lisa presented our evidence methodically, ruthlessly, comprehensively. Your Honor, we have evidence that Mr. Whitmore has been hiding marital assets in offshore accounts, shell companies, and fraudulent trusts. We have documentation showing that he deliberately sabotaged my client's career to make her financially dependent on him. And we have proof that he's been systematically underreporting his income to the IRS while using his law firm to launder money through fake clients and phantom billing. She handed the judge a stack of documents 6 inches thick. Bank records, tax returns, corporate filings, recorded phone calls, text messages, months of investigation condensed into irrefutable proof of Dominic's crimes. Judge Wilson spent 20 minutes reviewing the evidence while the courtroom sat in complete silence. Dominic was whispering urgently to his attorney, but I could see the panic in his eyes. Mr. Morrison, Judge Wilson finally said, are you aware that your client has been under federal investigation for tax evasion and money laundering? I'm sorry, Your Honor, what? Miss Chen, would you like to explain? Lisa stood up with the satisfaction of someone who'd been waiting months for this moment. Your Honor, yesterday morning, federal agents executed search warrants at Mr. Whitmore's law firm, his residence, and his financial institutions. He's currently under investigation by the FBI, the IRS, and the State Bar Association for multiple federal crimes. The courtroom erupted. Dominic's attorney looked like he'd been struck by lightning. Dominic himself was staring at me with an expression of pure hatred mixed with disbelief. Your Honor, Bradley stammered, my client has not been formally charged with any crimes. These are merely allegations. Mr. Morrison, Judge Wilson interrupted. According to the federal documents provided by Ms. Chen, your client's assets have been frozen pending the outcome of the criminal investigation. That would seem to complicate any discussion of asset division. That's when Dominic finally lost his composure completely. He stood up, ignoring his attorney's attempts to pull him back down. Your Honor, my wife is a vindictive woman who's trying to destroy me because I asked for a divorce. She's manufacturing evidence, making false accusations. Mr. Whitmore, Judge Wilson's voice cut through his rambling like a blade. Sit down and let your attorney speak for you. She's lying, Dominic shouted. She's trying to steal my family's money, my inheritance. Mr. Whitmore, sit down now or I'll hold you in contempt. Bradley finally managed to get Dominic back in his seat, but the damage was done. The mask had slipped completely. The composed, sophisticated lawyer was gone, replaced by a desperate man who was watching his entire life collapse in real time. Your Honor, Bradley said, trying to regain some semblance of control, my client is under tremendous stress. Perhaps we could request a continuance while these federal matters are resolved? Miss Chen, how does your client feel about a continuance? Lisa looked at me, and I shook my head slightly. I'd waited too long for this moment to delay it any further. Your Honor, my client opposes any continuance. She's been financially abused, emotionally manipulated, and psychologically tortured by Mr. Whitmore for years. She deserves resolution, and she deserves justice. Judge Wilson nodded. I agree. Mr. Morrison, your client's federal legal troubles are not grounds for delaying these proceedings. We'll continue. What happened next was the most satisfying moment of my entire life. Judge Wilson began her ruling, and with each word, I watched Dominic's face transform from anger to shock to complete devastation. Based on the evidence presented, I find that the prenuptial agreement is invalid due to fraudulent notarization and was signed under duress. I further find that Mr. Whitmore has systematically hidden marital assets and committed financial abuse against Mrs. Whitmore. Dominic was shaking his head, mouthing the word no over and over again. Therefore, I award Mrs. Whitmore 60% of all marital assets, including any assets discovered during the federal investigation. I also award her spousal support in the amount of $15,000 per month for 5 years. Your Honor, Bradley said desperately, my client's assets are frozen. He can't comply with this order. That's not my concern, Mr. Morrison. Your client should have considered the consequences of his actions before committing federal crimes. But Judge Wilson wasn't finished. Furthermore, I'm ordering Mr. Whitmore to pay Mrs. Whitmore's legal fees in the amount of $250,000, and I'm referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges related to the fraudulent prenup. Dominic looked like he was about to vomit. His perfect plan, his guaranteed victory, his ironclad protection, all of it was gone. Not only was he losing everything in the divorce, but he was facing criminal prosecution that could put him in prison for decades. Your Honor, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, I'd like to request a private conference with my attorney and Mrs. Whitmore to discuss settlement. Mr. Whitmore, the time for settlement has passed. This court has rendered its judgment. As we walked out of that courtroom, Dominic made one last desperate attempt to salvage something from the wreckage of his life. Caroline, he called after me, his voice cracking, we can work this out. We don't have to do this. I'll give you whatever you want. I turned around and looked at him. Really looked at him, for the first time in months. The arrogant, controlling man who'd tried to destroy me was gone. In his place was a broken, desperate person who'd finally realized that actions have consequences. Dominic, I said calmly, you already gave me everything I wanted. You showed me exactly who you are. 3 months after that courtroom victory, I was sitting in my new office, not the cramped cubicle I'd had at my old marketing job, but a real office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. The nameplate on my door read, Caroline Mitchell, Principal Consultant, Phoenix Strategic Solutions. The irony wasn't lost on me. Phoenix, rising from the ashes. Sometimes life writes its own metaphors. The final judgment had been even more devastating for Dominic than I'd imagined. 60% of our marital assets came to just over $8 million once all his hidden accounts were discovered and unfrozen. The monthly spousal support of $15,000 was just salt in the wound, assuming he'd ever be in a position to pay it. But the criminal charges were what really destroyed him. The IRS investigation had uncovered 15 years of tax evasion, totaling over $12 million in unpaid taxes, penalties, and interest. The FBI's money laundering investigation had exposed a criminal enterprise that involved 6 partners at his law firm and dozens of shell companies. Dominic was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. His law license was permanently revoked. His family's trust fund was seized to pay restitution to the government, and his firms defrauded clients. The man who had once told me I'd get nothing lost everything: his career, his freedom, his reputation, and his future. Jennifer, his paralegal girlfriend, had been granted immunity in exchange for her testimony against him. Last I heard, she'd moved back to her hometown in Nebraska and was working at a local law firm. She'd sent me a letter through my attorney, an apology that felt more like an attempt to clear her conscience than genuine remorse. I know you'll never forgive me, she wrote. But I want you to know that I never understood what kind of man he really was, until it was too late. He told me you were getting divorced, that you were okay with it, that you were already seeing someone else. I was young and stupid, and I believed him because I wanted to. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you. I never responded to her letter. Some apologies don't deserve acknowledgement. The hardest part wasn't the legal battles or the financial negotiations or even the criminal trial where I had to testify about years of psychological abuse. The hardest part was learning how to trust myself again. Learning how to make decisions without second-guessing every instinct, learning how to recognize the difference between someone who wanted to help me and someone who wanted to control me. Therapy helped. Dr. Rebecca Santos, a specialist in domestic abuse and financial manipulation, helped me understand that what I'd experienced had a name: coercive control. It wasn't just cheating or lying or even financial abuse. It was a systematic campaign to destroy my independence, my confidence, and my sense of reality. Caroline, Dr. Santos explained during one of our sessions, what your husband did to you is a form of psychological warfare. He used your love, your trust, and your values against you. Recovery isn't just about getting your money back, it's about getting yourself back. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, I did get myself back. I started Phoenix Strategic Solutions 6 months after the divorce was finalized. The idea came to me during a conversation with Lisa Chen about other women who'd been in similar situations, women who'd been financially abused, whose careers had been sabotaged, who'd been told they were nothing without their husbands. There's a market for what you know now, Lisa had said. Women who've been through what you've been through need someone who understands the system, who knows how to fight back, who can help them rebuild. Phoenix Strategic Solutions specializes in helping women recover from financial abuse. We provide consulting services for divorce proceedings, help rebuild sabotaged careers, and offer strategic planning for financial independence. In 18 months, we've helped over 200 women reclaim their lives. But the most unexpected part of my recovery was falling in love again. Robert Hayes, the forensic accountant who'd helped uncover Dominic's crimes, had become more than just a professional colleague. It started with coffee meetings that ran too long, phone calls that veered from business into personal territory, and a growing sense that I was talking to someone who truly understood me. Caroline, Robert said during one of our dinners about a year after the divorce, I've never met anyone as strong as you. What you did, what you survived, what you built afterward. It's extraordinary. I didn't feel strong, I admitted. I felt broken most of the time. Broken things can be rebuilt stronger than they were before, he said. You're living proof of that. Robert was everything Dominic wasn't. Kind without being manipulative, successful without being arrogant, supportive without being controlling. He celebrated my victories instead of trying to diminish them. He encouraged my independence instead of trying to undermine it. When I told him I was afraid to trust my judgment about men, he said something that changed everything. Don't trust your judgment about me, Caroline. Trust your judgment about yourself. You're not the same person who married Dominic. You're stronger, smarter, and more aware. If you choose to be with me, it won't be because I convinced you to. It'll be because you decided to. We've been together for 8 months now. He proposed last month, and I said yes. Not because I need someone to complete me or protect me or provide for me, but because I want to share my life with someone who sees me as an equal partner. The engagement ring is beautiful, but it's not the 3-carat diamond that Dominic used to mark his territory. It's a simple sapphire that Robert chose because he said it reminded him of my eyes. More importantly, there's no prenup this time. Because when 2 people enter a relationship with honesty, trust, and respect, you don't need legal protection from each other. Looking back on everything that happened, I realized that Dominic did me a favor in the cruelest way possible. He showed me what I was capable of when I stopped being afraid. He taught me that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. He proved that sometimes the system works when you know how to use it. If this story inspired you to fight back against someone who's trying to control your life, hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting free.